Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taormina.
Welcome to the first ever OAA Now. I am Sammy Taormina, the Dragon's Den blogger and also one of the hosts of the show Between Taorminas. Welcome to the first annual show called OAA Now. Today we're going to talk about the previews of the Oakland Activities Association football season. Starting, of course, last season we all know that the Clarkson Wolves won the state title. Of course, Harrison had a deep playoff run, so did Rochester Adams. Stony Creek made the playoffs the first time since 2007. And also, there's a lot of interesting new faces coaching different teams. Of course, Hazel Park, most notably, of course, with Scott Guthrie out and Kyle Riley in as the new coach of the Vikings. But first, let's go with the OA Blue division. Of course, the Blue last year was won by Birmingham Seaholm. Birmingham Seaholm now is up in the white. And there's a lot of questions when you look at the Blue. You know, a lot of interest, you know what I mean, especially when it comes to, of course, Pontiac coming down from the red to the blue, and also, of course, when you bring in Farmington, who was a team that had a lot of controversy added around there, and also Southfield Lathrop, a team who I thought really needed to move down from a year ago. When you look at we're gonna go from bottom to top. We'll also release the top 10 teams coming up. It'll be at the end of the show. So here is the Blue for the top teams. We'll go from bottom to top. This will include my projections heading into the year. Also when you look at these teams, you know, they've looking at their schedules. It's not going to be an easy schedule for some of these teams. But let's go with my 24th ranked team. Of course, that would be. I would rank, and I did some of these rankings yesterday, of course, at home. So let's go first with the Ferndale Eagles. The Eagles last year, they were not very good last year. They were 2-7 a year ago. They had 2 wins, of course. You know, it was a tough year for Ryan Dunlap and his crew over at Ferndale. But they do return a very good quarterback coming back in Darius Sinclair. Darius Sinclair, of course, you know, they're going to be throwing a lot this year, I expect, because Ferndale did have a nice running game last year, but their defense will still be an issue. This was not a good defense last year. They were not a good team a year ago, and they could struggle again this year. Ferndale, of course, you know, their schedule is very unique. I mean, like Ferndale, they open up the season with, get my notes here. They open up the year with Livonia Clarenceville. Of course, Livonia Clarenceville, a lot of people know that was a team that was coached by former Lake Orion assistant and former Royal coach Ryan Irish. I think that'll be an interesting matchup there. And, of course, Ferndale does conclude the year with the trip to Almont up in Lapeer County, which that ought to be interesting. And then, of course, when you look at the Blue, when you look at the OA Blue, Ferndale's schedule is not going to be easy, especially when you have to play Groves to kick off the league schedule, and you got to kick off with Berkeley, which is not going to be an easy game. Of course, you know, when I look at the Blue, you know what I mean, they don't have a lot of top 10 games on there, but Ferndale, they could have an interesting year in there. The next team, of course, is the Pontiac Phoenix. Of course, Pontiac last year was 0-9 a year ago. They actually struggled. You know, they couldn't even. Well, they have a lot of uncertainties coming in. They have a new coaching staff and over there. I mean, like, but Pontiac, they got a lot of questions that linger. Of course, you know, with their uncertain school situation, the financial situation they've went through over there. These are the things the players cannot control, but they can control things that are on the field. And Pontiac's got 2 very good wide receivers / corners, and DeMar Antoine and Henry Rowe. I think those 2 guys are going to have a big year. I think Pontiac will be better than people think. You know, when you look at it, they only got 8 games in the schedule. They open up with North Farmington. That's a game I think they got a chance at winning. But Pontiac, of course, you know, we'll see what happens with them. They're in the lower division. Of course, the last time they were in a lower division was their first year. They end up winning the Blue and also making the playoffs at that time. They have not made the playoffs, however, since Coach Brad Zuby, who is now coaching at Stony Creek, last season, 2011, they have been 1-17 since the 2011 playoff loss to Clarkston. And that's difficult. You know what I mean? That is very, very difficult, and it's very sad to see what is going on at Pontiac. The next team, of course, on this list is the Birmingham, Beverly Hills, Willie Groves Falcons. Falcons, of course, lost Ross Williams. They won a division last year. They actually were one of the teams in the division last year that was second place. You know, they lose a very good running back in Ross Williams. And when you look at Groves, this is a team in which they're going to be rebuilding a little bit. They got a quarterback they're going to rely a lot on, and probably his arm in Zach Van Fossen. If he can develop his guard play and get some good receiver weapons, you know what I mean? I think Groves could be right in the thick of water. The next guy, of course, is Devon Curry, who is a cornerback for Groves. I think that he'll have another big year for what he did last year. And, you know, for Groves, the key is going to be his consistency. You know, if they can develop that, I think Groves could be back in the blue discussion. Next team in discussion, of course, you got the Bears of Berkeley. The Berkeley Bears is one of the they were 3-6 last year. Lost a lot of senior talent. Of course, this was the first year for Coach Chris Sequoia coaching on varsity. But you look at Groves, Berkeley, sorry, my bad. Bears, they got some talent coming back. You know, they got some good line play up front. They got Dakota Dryback back. They got Mike Burdwich back, and they got Austin Wood, who I think is going to be a very, very interesting when it comes to Berkeley. I think when you look at the Bears, you know, they haven't made the playoffs since 2010. You know, and also, you know, if Berkeley can get at least some nice wins, you know, they had a big win last year at Auburn Hills Aberdale on their homecoming. But then they had a really terrible loss to Royal Oak. That was just bad right there. But if Berkeley can fix that consistent play there, I think the Bears can go places this year. And that's something that has a lot of fans excited, especially in Berkeley. Next team here I'm really excited about, of course, is one of these teams, of course. It's the Hazel Park Vikings. The Hazel Park Vikings, yes. Got a new coach in Kyle Riley who plays Scott Glennon after a disappointing 0-9 season last year. You know, but the Bear is not covered at Hazel Park. They got a lot of good pieces. Hazel Park, you know, they're always been known for a running team. Kyle Riley, of course, coming in there. He probably knows the pound the rock theme more than anybody besides his dad, Bud, at Oxford. You know, I think he's going to bring that pound the rock scheme at Hazel Park, and I think he's going to bring a lot of stability to that program, and it's really in a team that really has been 7-20 since 2011. You know, this is going to be. I think Hazel Park is going to surprise people this year. They're one of my dark horse teams in the OAA Blue, and then of course they return some key pieces. They got a two running back system I like in Jalen Adams and Tyrone Ball, who I think is going to be very productive to go along with their 2-year starter. And quarterback Jared Schultz. He also plays safety for Hazel Park. And also, that is a team I think that should be a team to keep an eye on is the Hazel Park Vikings. It wouldn't surprise me if they crack top 10 this year in the Den poll, but also Hazel Park will surprise people this year. And then, of course, you look at the next team on the list, of course, is the Farmington Falcons. A lot of controversy surrounds this team. A lot of hype, though, around this team now. This was a team that was 7-2 in 2012. They had a very nice year. However, they did lose. They lost that year to they had a 3-game losing streak that ended up hurting their team and included the loss in the playoffs to Walled Lake Western. And then last year, they were 2-7. 2-7. Why? This team was 2-7, and they could not even. They had a lot of controversy. I've been hearing there's still a lot of controversy this year surrounding that team. You know, and of course, this could be a huge distraction. You know, when I look at guys, you know, Kyle Collins returns at quarterback for Farmington for his it'll be his third he'll be a senior this year, so he's been playing 3 straight years. But also you got to look at a guy like Desmond Kirkpatrick. Desmond Kirkpatrick is probably one of the of course, I've been hearing a lot of bad things about this guy. Of course, he played 1 year at Farmington Hills Harrison, then transferred over to Farmington, and that could be. But a lot of people have been hyping up Kirkpatrick to be a very good player. But I'm curious to see how he plays against some very good teams. You know what I mean? I'm curious to see how he plays, especially week 1 against Farmington Hills Harrison. That's going to be a tough matchup for them right there off the get-go. And also, they got to play against Walled Lake Central to close out the year, and that is not going to be an easy game right there. And then you got to look at at defense. I really like David Reese, their linebacker. He's going to be a very, very good player. I think he's going to be the anchor of that Farmington defense. I think that if Farmington is going to have a successful season, they're going to rely a lot on that talent, but also the question is, can they develop a consistent running game? Can they also develop a consistent passing game? A number two besides Kirkpatrick, I think would be huge for this team. And also line play. If they can get good line play, Farmington could go places. They could even win the Blue this year. Now, a lot of people have said Farmington can win the Blue. I don't think this team can win it because of the dysfunction, the distractions. Of course, there's been a lot of people say about Farmington that the parents are running asylum. That is the case. I mean, that could be the case over there, and it could be another long year. But if they cannot make the playoffs this year, it'll be another tough year, a long winter for John Buethel and his staff. The next team, of course, I'm really excited about to see is Southfield Lathrop. Southfield Lathrop, this was a team last year that scored 88 points last year, total. That was a rough year for Coach Keith Stevens in his first year. It's be his second year. Of course, you have another good year with quarterback Reggie Harris. Reggie Harris is a very, very good quarterback. This guy you got to keep an eye on this year. If he can develop into if he can get some help, you know what I mean? I think Southfield Lathrop can give him some help. If he can get some help, I think Southfield Lathrop's going to do some damage. This is a team to watch out for this year. Is Southfield Lathrop, because lower division, the opponents will be a little bit down, more to their style. I think that Southfield Lathrop, I think Reggie Harris could be one of the best players in the Blue this season. And then, of course, my last team, who I think is favored to win the Blue this year, Auburn Hills Avondale. You got Joshua Howman back. He's going to Cincinnati. He ran a 4.26 at Alabama's team camp. Very good running back, of course, And then you got to look at also Avondale's got other weapons this year besides Howman. Travis Janus, who's a quarterback this year. I think he's going to be a very, very good if he can, he's gonna have some opportunities to throw the ball because there's gonna be opponents that's gonna put at least 7 or 8 guys in the box, and I think that Avondale is gonna have a very, very big year. I think that and also defensively, this was a team that has to improve on that area. You got to look at Tricola Battle there at defensive end, who I think is gonna be a good player there, and I think that James Prince, who's also gonna be there as well at safety. It's gonna really help Steve Deutsch really turn this program around because this was a perennial playoff team since 2009 that made the playoffs. They missed them last year. They won 3 straight games to close out the year. And the question over there at Avondale, I think, is not if, but when. This will be a very good playoff team in my opinion, and I think that they will be in the playoffs. When I look at the top games for the OAA Blue, the top 10 games I look at, 10, Groves at Waterford Mott week 9. It's a tough match for Groves. Waterford Mott's an improving team. They're going to be they're a building block. Waterford Mott, of course, they return a lot of experience. There's been a lot of hype over there at Waterford. This could be a playoff team this year. Be a big test for Groves, and it will be a very, very interesting matchup right there. Of course, Waterford Mott, of course, home of my cameraman, Joe Velez's alma mater, and I think that Waterford Mott, it would not surprise me to see Joe Velez dance in the playoffs this year with Waterford Mott making the playoffs. Number 9, of course, will be I got 2 games at that spot. Farmington versus at Harrison. It's the at Groves week 1. Farmington and Harrison is a very interesting game. Farmington does not match well with Harrison at all. Harrison's got a very good defense. Farmington's got Kyle Collins and Des Kirkpatrick. I think when you look at that matchup, I think this is a bad matchup for Farmington, especially when you have to look at possibly seeing Devin Cook against Desmond Kirkpatrick. That is not a good matchup right there for Farmington at all. And then, of course, Seaholm and Groves week 1. Of course, Seaholm and Groves, that's always a rivalry game right there. Seaholm won that game last year over Groves, but, Seaholm's in an upper division now. But Seaholm did lose a lot on defense. Groves, it'll be a very interesting matchup to see how they do, especially in the post-Ross Williams era. The 8th best game, I think, on this list will be week 7, Hazel Park at Farmington. Farmington, of course, very talented at both skill possessions there. And in Hazel Park, of course, the Pound the Rock team under Kyle Rowley, who's who I think is going to be a very, very good. I think he's probably the best acquisition Hazel Park has had in a long, long time, and that's being honest right there. But I think it'll be a good game right there between Hazel Park and Farmington Week 7. Number 7, staying with the Vikings, they play at Avondale Week 2. Of course, everybody knows the rivalry between Hazel Park and Avondale. It goes like 50-48, 50-48 type of games, you know what I mean? But last year really was not that close at all. It was 49-0. That was bad in favor of Avondale, you know. But Hazel Park, I think with the new coaching staff and Kyle Riley, I think he's going to turn that thing around. But if he can build that defense, improve that defense, that allowed 45.5 points per game last year, which was mind-boggling for the league, for a team. I think Hazel Park and Avondale, that could be an interesting game, especially if Hazel Park can try to contest Joshua Hallman, which I don't think they will be able to. Joshua Hallman, I think, will get at least maybe 6 touchdowns in that game. But it'll be a shootout. It could be a shootout. We'll see what happens there. Number 6, of course, is Groves at Lathrop in Week 3. That's a good matchup right there for Southfield Lathrop because it's a good showcase to show Reggie Harris, you know, to see how he does. It's a good test. Groves has got a good defense, of course. You know, they got 2 very good corners. You know, got a good corner and Devon Carey. I think it's going to be an interesting one right there. I like that matchup right there. It's interesting. Number 5, of course, Berkeley at Lathrop. The Bears, of course. The Bears, very interesting team, of course. Very young team coming back. They lost a lot of seniors from a year ago. You know, they got it. I mean, this would be a good test for Berkeley to see where they're at Week 8. They could be out of it, but also Lathrop could be battling for an OA Blue title. So who knows? We'll see what happens there with Keith Stevens' crew over there at Lathrop. The 4th best game in the blue, I think, will be Berkeley and Farmington Week 6. That is going to be an interesting one. Berkeley, of course, you know, this was the time of year where they shocked Avondale 34-31 a year ago. Now I think they can do the same thing to Farmington. Farmington, however, I think is going to be much stronger up front. Actually, take it back. Berkeley's got an edge up front, but, you know, Farmington, of course, they got the skill players. I think that's going to be a huge issue right there for Berkeley. Is if it goes to an aerial attack, it's advantage Farmington. But if it goes to a power play game, advantage Berkeley. Of course, number 3, the 3rd best game, I think, is Southfield Lathrop Farmington. Last year was 25-6 in favor of Farmington. But Farmington had to score 19 points late to knock off Southfield Lathrop. So this is going to be a very interesting game. I think this is the revenge game for the Chargers. I think this is a very interesting test for Farmington, but we'll see what happens right there. And then, of course, the number 2 game, of course, it's a rematch. Berkeley at Avondale, Week 5. You know, remember, it was 34-31 on the homecoming last year in favor of Berkeley. Avondale's defense was atrocious that game. And then Berkeley, of course, you know, they took a lot of opportunities. This is a little bit of a weaker Bears team that they had in years past, but they could struggle again. You know, in this one, I think it'll be Avondale. This will motivate the Yellow Jackets because this was a game that cost them a trip to the playoffs last year. Let's not forget that. And then the number 1 game, I think, in the blue is Avondale at Farmington Week 3. This is a matchup where a lot of people between Joshua Hallman and David Reese. This is going to be a heck of a matchup right there. And then, of course, the key really is going to be, can Avondale throw the ball? And also, can Farmington test Avondale's corners? I think it'll be very interesting there. Des Kirkpatrick's going to have a very interesting matchup when you look at it. Probably when you look at the corners that Avondale has, it'll be a very interesting matchup. I just think in the end, I think that that game will decide the OA Blue, in my opinion. You know, when I look at the teams who I think is favored, of course, I said it earlier before. I think Avondale is 1. Lathrop 2. Farmington 3. Hazel Park 4. Groves 5. Berkeley 6. 7 would be Pontiac, and 8 Ferndale. That is my review on the OAA Blue. Now, when we come back, we will talk about the OAA White Division here on OAA Now.
Prescription drug abuse is a national epidemic. The new in way to obtain drugs is through parents' or grandparents' medicine chests. Removing prescriptions from your cabinet is the best way to keep drugs out of the hands of our young people. We've got to work together to protect our teens, our seniors, and our environment. Clean out your medicine cabinet today. Please participate in Operation Medicine Cabinet and drop off your unwanted or expired prescriptions at one of our law enforcement drop-off sites in Oakland County. We can't ignore this situation anymore.
Welcome back to OAA Now. I am Sammy Taormina, the blogger for the Dragon's Den, and also host of the ON TV show Between Taorminas, of course, on the best news station and best show here, best channel, ON TV. I'd like to thank Joe Velez, who is here doing the camera and the voices here. And of course, let's go with what I think one of the toughest divisions in the state, the OAA White. And this division here is very, very brutal because you got to look at teams like Oak Park, Harrison, Ferndale, Southfield, and Rochester Adams is in this division, that's not going to be an easy game. That's not going to be easy either. When you look at teams like Adams, when you look at teams like Oak Park, Harrison, Southfield, and Seaholm, this is going to be a very interesting division to watch, especially coming up. Now, of course, you got to let's look at some teams first here. Of course, Oak Park is the first team on the list here. The nice return of a very solid core. Of course, they are led by, the running back, John Kelly, who is going to who probably is going to go to a college. I know Michigan State was one of the teams that he was mentioning going. But I'll bet you John Kelly is probably focused on his senior season. He's going to have some good weapons, too. I think Oak Park, of course, in the last few years, when you look at the stats, Oak Park in the last 2 years have been 15-8 since 2012. Of course, we all know that was the first time Oak Park made the playoffs for the first time since 2005. Of course, Greg Carter's done a very, very good job of this program. Of course, he's had to bring in some transfers, from Inkster, from where he used to coach at, also around the Detroit area. And also, he's done a very good job as a coach and athletic director. I got to give him my props right there. He is one of the classy guys also, not only in the OAA, but also in the state of Michigan. That's why he's a good coach, and he's also a very good mentor. When you look at his team, the Knights, Oak Park, of course, this is a team last year that they did a lot of damage. They played a brutal schedule. Played 3 games at home last year. Had a couple tough losses. They had a loss to Oxford, and then of course a loss to Lake Orion last year. But they had enough playoff points to get in the playoffs because they played in that rugged white. Oak Park is a very interesting team to watch this year. Of course, they returned Chauncey Lohman, who's going to be a sophomore in his third year. Actually, he'd be a junior. My bad. In his third year, I think that Lohman's going to be a very, very good quarterback. I think he's going to balance everything out, and I also think that he's going to have a good wide receiver to look at in Juan Hernandez, who, of course, everybody knows, especially from Rochester Adams, knows about Juan Hernandez, what he did to them last year. That was a nightmare for Adams when they played. But you put Lohman, Kelly, and Hernandez together, you got a very, very good offense right there. I think it'll be a good year for them offensively in Night Valley. But remember, let's not forget, Night Valley has got a defense too. This defense was nasty last year. This was a very, they gave over 20 points a game last year, but this is a better team than people think. And I think Oak Park, of course, they're going to have a lot of good linemen, especially. They got corners. They're going to be very good. Of course, Kelly, besides running back, he plays corner. But Oak Park this year, they got Shaheed Bellamy I'm looking forward to seeing, and also Ricardo Smith. Ricardo Smith is a very, very talented defensive end. Bellamy, of course, very good up front. They're going to bring a lot of pressure. I think Oak Park's going to be right there in the very end. I think they're going to be in a lot of good big games. They have a tough game week 1, though, with Detroit Cass Tech at Wayne State, in which the good thing, if there's one good thing here for them, is Jeevu Campbell's not playing in that game. He's still going to be probably in jail. But they're going to probably rely a lot on quarterback Rodney Hall in that first game, and they got Mike Weaver over there. That'll be an interesting game for Oak Park when they play Detroit Cass Tech in that one. And then, of course, the next team I'm going to look at, of course, is the Highlanders of Rochester Adams. Adams, of course, last year, they shot Clarkston, but then again, let's look at the weather conditions there. It was kind of an odd thing that Ian Erickson played in that second day of that game, but still they lost that one. I mean, Adams had a really nice year. They had a couple games where they lost some tough ones, but they do return a lot of talent. Last year Adams did lose Matt Sokol to a devastating injury, and then enter quarterback Kyle Wood, who was a freshman last year. He did the damage for him. He was a very good quarterback. He knew how to run that veer option very well. They're going to rely a lot on that veer option to run a lot. They have a very good running back also back in Clarence Baraknox, who I think is going to be a very good running back and also going to be a good complement to Wood over at Adams. And also to run the veer option, also you got to have a good line. You also got to have good line play, and Adams has that. And we look at Paul Marcelli. I think he's the key to this veer option working because, they're going to run a lot of trap. They're going to run a lot of dive. They're going to run a lot of and also if you're a defensive end, that quarterback's going to be reading your eyes, of course, especially. And that's what Adams is basically known for when they run that veer option is when the quarterback runs the eyes, he has a lot of choices. He can go to the fullback. He can go to the halfback. He can also even throw the ball, or he can run the quarterback option himself. So that's what the veer option is going to do. And I think Adams pretty much ever since Tony Petrino got there to Rochester Adams, he has ran the veer option, and it's worked for him ever since. And also, it's won him a state title, of course, let's remember, in 2002. And let's look at the next team, of course, on this list, Farmington Hills Harrison Hawks. This is a very, very good team that we're going to have here this year. Wilbur Harrison, of course, got Javon Shaw. Their quarterback is back for another campaign. But this is a defense that is just nasty. Harrison, when you look at this team, of course, they have made the playoffs 8 of the last 9 years. This was a very good team. They won a state title in 2010 in D2. And then, of course, this team's got nasty linebackers this year. You got defensive end. You got a West Bloomfield transfer coming in, and Khalid Kareem, who's going to be a very good defensive end. And then you got Michael Jima. Of course, his brother Mario was at Michigan. I think he's going to have a big year. He's having a lot of hype. But a guy I'm excited to see, of course, is Devin Cook. Very good corner, very good receiver. He is fast. He's durable. I think he's going to have a huge year over at Harrison. And, of course, got linebacker Arari Smith, who I think good linebacker, very, very good linebacker, very underrated player. I think that Harrison could do some damage this year in the white, but also, and it's going to be a good year all year. It's that group I call the group, the white this year, probably call it the group of death. The next team, of course, I'm going to mention here is the Southfield Blue Jays. The Blue Jays, of course, very interesting team. Lost Malik McDonald and Lawrence Marshall. McDonald, of course, going to Michigan State. Lawrence Marshall to Michigan. It'll be an interesting year for Gary Teasley and his Blue Jays, but they do return 3-year cornerback Ray Buford. Buford getting a lot of offers. He's also a very good corner. He reminds me of a no-fly zone there type player at Michigan State, but also he can be a very good player as well. I mean, Southfield, of course, they're going to rely a lot on him. Got a very tough matchup week 1 with Orchard Lake St. Mary's. That's not going to be an easy game right there. But also you got to look at with Southfield, if they can develop the quarterback quick, if they can develop their everything. Of course, let's look at historically Southfield Southfield has been 23-11 since 2011. That is just shocking right there. And that is a good record on how Gary Teasley has done over at Southfield. And that is why I think Southfield can be a very, very interesting team to match up. Now, are they a playoff team? People say they're a borderline playoff team, I think, but it could be a very interesting year. But if they make the playoffs, wouldn't surprise me. This team's in at 5-4. But if they win 6 games or 7 games, that'll be a huge accomplishment. And of course, this defense, remember last year, only allowed 106 points, which was the fewest in the OAA, and that is a good thing to have right there. And then, of course, the next team, of course, the team that shocked Southfield in the playoffs, Birmingham Seaholm, is going to be very interesting this year. They won the Blue last year. They had one of the best defenses in the entire league. this was a good defense that they had, but now a lot of those defensive players are gone. And that's going to be interesting, especially when you're moving up a division from the blue to the white. Of course, you're going to be led in quarterback Tommy Shepard, who returns for the Maples. Of course, he's got a good arm, but they're not bare on defense. So they got Jack Payne coming back. I think it'll be an interesting year for Seaholm, especially for Coach Jim DeWall, who's going to have a very, very interesting, young team, to say the least, in a very tough division. And then, of course, the next team we're going to look at, of course, the Rochester Falcons. Rochester, they were senior lane team last year in the red. They had a tough year, but, this could be an interesting year for Eric Vernon. You know what I mean? They really have not had a good crew in the last few seasons. But this is a team I think Rochester could be. They're a team, they're a little inexperienced this year. They could have problems brewing. But if Rochester can look into the and to get better, this is a team, remember, they have not beaten their arch rival, Rochester Adams, since 1996. That is alarming when you look at it, especially when your arch rival on Adams Road has beaten you since 1996. That's frightening. You know what I mean? And to see that, and I don't know if it'll happen this year. I don't think it will, but it might be a long drought. Might be a long year for Eric Vernon, especially because you open up the year when you have to go to Lapeer, a place where, of course, they just merged with Lapeer East, Lapeer West. That's going to be a very tough matchup right there for Rochester. That is going to be just a tough game for them, especially when you have to deal with that traffic, going up there into Lapeer and also playing that team. Kind of odd. Lapeer's colors this year are dark blue and green. It's interesting, the Lapeer Lightning. But that's for another time. The next team we're going to look at, of course, is the Royal Oak Ravens. The Ravens, of course, out is Ryan Irish. In is Jim Chapman. Yep. He is the one that, of course, coming over from Madison Heights Lamphere. Royal Oak does have some pieces back that they're going to rely a lot on. You got to look at quarterback Brendan Beer, who's going to be a very interesting quarterback to watch. When you look at the Ravens, he did do well. He made some mistakes last year, but also you got Noah Chachansky, who's back as well, who I think he's going to have a big year, especially at running back, and actually when he plays defense as well on corner. And also they got a very good defensive lineman. Royal Oak is going to be all right, and you got Cullen Conway, who I think if he can bring pressure, Royal Oak will be all right. I think, Royal Oak probably is in better shape right now than Rochester is right now, but we'll see what happens. And then the last team on this list, of course, is the Raiders of North Farmington. North Farmington has always done well when they go to the blue, when they stay in the blue. But when they're in the white, it's a whole other animal. This is not good. They've been not good in the white, and now they're in the white. They could struggle again, but their defense, most of their defense is back. They're led by John Smith at corner. They got a defensive lineman / offensive lineman and Matt Blair, and defensive Martiotto, who's going to have to carry the load for the Raiders this season. And they might have to do it this year. Of course, when you look at the top 10 games of the OAA white, you got to look at, and of course, number 10 is the crossovers. So we don't know the crossover games yet, but you look at those games, possible matchups. You got Clarkson Oak Park, maybe Lake Orion Adams. You know what I mean? The only for sure game is Stony Creek has to play at Rochester, and that game, you might as well get that game to Stony Creek. No offense, because Stony Creek, I think that's gonna be very interesting to figure that one out. And then, of course, the 9th ranked game is, of course, I think also Rochester, in my opinion, back to the 10 is they're going to be a little bit. I mean, Rochester's very young, but I just think Stony Creek, it'll be an interesting game. 2 experienced coaching staffs, and Eric Vernon, and of course Stony Creek over Brad Zuby. Of course, number 9, of course, is the games at Wayne State. Oak Park versus Detroit Cass Tech. Southfield versus Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Orchard Lake St. Mary's and Southfield, that's an interesting one because Southfield has a little bit younger. They still got some speed, but Orchard Lake St. Mary's is on a mission. This is a team that missed the playoffs last year. Week 1, Orchard Lake St. Mary's will be motivated. This will be an interesting year for George Port, you know what I mean, his crew. I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I wish it was on the red turf there, but then again, they're probably doing it as part of the Big Day Prep Classic over there at Wayne State. And also one of the big ones, Oak Park, Detroit Cass Tech. Oak Park, of course, battle running backs, John Kelly versus Mike Weber. When you look at Detroit, when you look at the quarterback battle, it's Rodney Hall of Detroit Cass Tech versus Chauncey Lohman. That's an interesting matchup right there. Hall has had some experience when Campbell's been out, and of course, defensively, it's an interesting matchup there. I think it's a good matchup to watch. It'd be a very, very top-notch matchup right there in Week 1. And that's a night game. It's a home game, technically, for Detroit Cass Tech, because Oak Park's the one's got to travel. But it's going to be very, very interesting right there. Number 8, of course, involves Birmingham Seaholm. Both those games, they have to play home with Harrison Week 8. And they're at Oak Park for Week 7. I think both those games are going to be interesting for Seaholm to see where they're at. I think Oak Park's going to be a very good test for Seaholm, right there, especially with their athletes. Harrison, same thing, of course. This will be the first time probably in a long while that Seaholm has seen a very athletic quarterback in Javon Shaw. And Seaholm's got it, and Harrison's got a defense. Let's not forget, this is a very athletic team that will get on you, and I think it'll be an interesting time for Birmingham Seaholm in that matchup. Number 7, of course, is Southfield and Rochester Adams. It's a rematch of a game last year that was won by Southfield. A lot of controversy surrounded that one. I think that when you look at that one, I think this is an interesting. Oh, correction, my bad. It's Seaholm versus Adams Week 3. My bad. See where Seaholm's at. They have 2 games where they're 2 winnable games that they should win, but for Adams, it'll be a huge game right there for them. Number 6, of course, is Southfield at Seaholm. It's a playoff rematch, of course, Week 5, in which Seaholm eliminates Southfield from the playoffs. Southfield and Seaholm, it'll be another good one for Week 6. Now we go to number 5, which is Southfield and Adams Week 2. You know what I mean? Like I said, the controversy surrounding that game last year, I think Adams has not forgotten that. Plus, Southfield's got to travel to Adams, which that's not going to be an easy trip. It is not an easy trip when you have to travel to Rochester Adams to play a Tony Petrino team. Number 4 is the rivalry between Oak Park and Southfield. This has been a rivalry that's been building, for years. I think that this is an interesting game right there. And also we got to mention also on here, I didn't put on my list, is Southfield and Harrison. That is always a fun matchup right there, especially because in the series, usually the road team has won that game. That's a matchup I haven't mentioned on there, but I will mention that one to recognize that matchup. Number 3 is Adams and Harrison, Week 6. That'll be a good one right there. Rochester Adams, of course, and Harrison, of course. Rivalry game right there. They've been rivals for years. This is going to be an interesting one. This game is going to be a close game. I expect it to be a close game. It comes down to 2 different styles of play. Harrison, of course, likes to spread it out, they'll run power a little bit. Of course, Adams, of course, with that veer option, we know. And then, of course, number 2, of course, is Adams and Oak Park. That's going to be a good one to watch. Can Adams stop John Kelly? Adams did not look good last year at home against Oak Park. But Oak Park, they look really, really good. I was very impressed with the Knights. They're going to be a dangerous team in this one, and Adams is the one traveling to Oak Park, playing at that 6 o'clock game. That is not going to be an easy game there. And the top game right there of the white, I think, will be Oak Park and Harrison. You know what the final score of that game last year was, Joe? What the final score of that one was? 60-52, Harrison. That was mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. Because both teams did very well offensively that day. If you're a defensive coordinator, it was a nightmare. And they're going to be back Week 3, playing that game again. It could be on a Saturday. It could be very interesting. And, of course, that game right there with Oak Park and Harrison, that could decide the white. But a lot of these other games could decide the OAA white. When you look at the white, this is no doubt, in my opinion, one of the top kiss of death leagues in this league. When I look at others like the Detroit News, who ranked Oak Park pretty high at 6, I ranked Oak Park in the blog at number 2. But we'll see what happens coming into the year. When you look at it here, when I look at the white, I think Oak Park in the white is 1. I think Harrison's 2, Adams 3, Seaholm 4, Southfield 5. 6 is Rochester. 7 is North Farmington. No, sorry, 7 is Royal Oak, and 8 is North Farmington. Now, when we come back, we will talk the OAA Red here on OAA Now.
We own a Habitat home.
I love working on my Habitat home.
Soy dueño de una casa de Habitat.
My neighbor is a Habitat homeowner.
Being a Habitat homeowner has changed our lives.
My mortgage payment for Habitat is less than what I pay for rent.
Habitat for Humanity of Oakland County currently has homes available with mortgage payments lower than most rent payments. If you or someone you know needs decent and affordable housing, call 248-338-1843 or visit our website at habitatoakland.org.
Welcome back to OA Now. I'm Sammy Taormina, of course, the blogger for the Dragon's Den, and also one of the hosts of Between Taorminas, which is a sports talk show on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock on ONTV. Of course, we have the OA Red, which is a division, a very interesting division, because you got Oxford and Bloomfield Hills moving up from the white to the red this year, and that is of course, there's been a lot of hype surrounding a couple of these teams from Oakland Press sports writer Scott Bernstein, who said, well, hype up West Bloomfield. They're going to be a very, very good team. You know what I mean? They will be. But they will be this year, I think. You know, they have a lot of good talent. Ronald Bellamy's had a really tough year over there at West Bloomfield, but this could be his best team he's had. But let's go to the Red. You know what I mean? When you look at the Red, the top team in this league, of course, you got to go with the Clarkson Wolves. They're the defending state champions. They won that last year. They returned 60% of their offense. They're led by quarterback DJ Zazula. Of course, a lot of people said he played injured last year, and they said his leg injury has healed, you know, and he's in line for a big year. He's got plenty of weapons to choose from. When you look at Cole Chewins, when you look at Joe Pop, Austin Angler, and then, of course, your running backs, you got Nolan Erickson, the brother of Ian Erickson, who moved up, who had a big year in JV last year. And also you got Centris Williams, a transfer, of course, from Macomb, Dakota, who actually did very, very well last season for Clarkson in a limited role. But also you got, of course, Clarkson does return some players on defense. Of course, you got their linemen. Of course, Adam Maddock, of course, you know, his brother Nick, of course, was one of the best linemen at Clarkson. They did lose David Beadle, which hurts them. David Beadle, of course, going to Michigan State. They did return Merritt Canada, who's going to be a very good corner, and also, you know, they might have some guys that go two ways, which I think I have a huge problem with guys going two ways, especially when you look at it, especially if you're Clarkston or Lake Orion. When you have those guys go two ways, and you have about 85 kids on the team, that's a problem for me. I think that it has to be addressed. I think, and that has to be addressed with Kurt Richardson and Chris Bell for both those coaches. You know, that's what I think could when you have players go two ways, especially with your quarterback, that's an issue right there. Unless you're forced to do it, you know what I mean. But for those two teams, there was no reason to do it last year. You know what I mean. But Clarkson and Lake Orion both did it last year, and that's one of the things that I did question last season. Next team, of course, is the of course Clarkston. Of course, my bad. Back to Clarkson. Of course, the question is, can they repeat? You know, the schedule's very tough this year. They open up Macomb, Dakota, week 1. And also, they got to play at Lake Orion. They got to play at Oxford. And they got to play West Bloomfield at home. And, of course, that crossover is going to be tough. It's going to be a very interesting game to see where Clarkson is at heading into the year. I mean, a lot of people have said they can repeat. You know, Tom Markowski, of course, the Detroit News, who's retiring after 35 years, is saying that this is the best team that they've had. This is the number 1 ranked team in the Detroit News poll. Which I have a little bit of a problem with that because I'm not selling their defense because, you know, they lose a good guy in Kane Wallington, who was a very good corner last year for them, you know, but they got some questions that on defense. And, of course, I think the schedule is a little bit more brutal than it has been in years past for Clarkston. Next team I'm going to look at, of course, is our very own Lake Orion Dragons. The Dragons, very interesting team. You got to look at, of course, this was a team that was 7-2 last year. Defense was abysmal, was not good last year. They allowed 22.2 points a game last year. That's something that is on Lake Orion, like, right there. And, of course, They do have some talent back there on that defensive line, especially in Justin Cathers, and also corners in Jalen Wiggins, who I think is going to have a huge year for this team, and also Drew Casey, who I think needs to have a step-up year. The question can be a linebacker situation. Who will Lake Orion replace? That'll be on the Dragon Preview Show when we talk about that in a few weeks. But they offensively, Lake Orion will replace, of course. Lake Orion will have Matt Krause back, of course, at running back, and also running back Keith Fields, I think, returns as well from a team that has had 13 consecutive playoff berths. Let's not forget, Lake Orion has had 13 consecutive berths. I mean, that streak could be in jeopardy this year. A lot of questions because that schedule is tough. They got to play Chippewa Valley on the road week 1, Oxford week 4, Clarkson week 8, and of course got that crossover game week 9. That's going to be a dangerous game. If Lake Orion can win one of those games, I think they're a playoff team, and I think they will be a playoff team this year. You just watch that right there. Next team, of course, the Oxford Wildcats, the pound and rock scheme that they do. Bud Riley, of course, he likes to run the ball, but he doesn't have a true star running back this year, which is going to put a lot of more pressure on their quarterback, Glacier Wallington. Wallington, of course, is known for his legs. He's known for his athleticism. He can create plays out of nothing. He's got a receiver, though, this year in Dallas Truitt, who's going to be a very, very good player. He was a jumper in track. I mean, like, he can build. I mean, like, if Wallington Oxford's going to rely a lot on Wallington. If he gets hurt or anything, Oxford's in a lot of trouble heading into the season. But the key for them for Oxford is to make sure Glacier Wallington stays healthy. He also plays corner for him on defense, so that could be a little bit of an issue right there. Depth's a huge concern for Oxford, and also defense is a huge concern for Oxford. But their pound the rock scheme, of course, their time possession football they're known for is very interesting over there. But if Oxford can keep the ball for about at least 28 to 30 minutes a game, you know what I mean? I think that Oxford will be in good shape. Of course, the next team, of course, everybody's hyping up this team, of course, is the Lakers of West Bloomfield. The Lakers, of course, a lot of athletes back, you know what I mean? Got Michael King and Tristan Jackson. Tristan Jackson, of course, a lot of people consider him to be an athlete. Yeah, he is an athlete, but I would consider him pretty much a wide receiver because he played quarterback until he got hurt. And then he moved to wide receiver. But this guy is a very good player, very good athlete, and he's going to be a very, very dynamic player. And he's only a junior. And, of course, you got Michael King also is going to be the starting quarterback. Very good quarterback, knows it well, dual threat. He can be a very, very dangerous player this year. And West Bloomfield, of course, got a couple guys, you know what I mean? They bring back Obi Jackson, an interesting linebacker right there. Of course, I did read in one of the blogs, with thanks to Jeff Corrin, from the D-Zone who wrote about one of these players' profiles. One of these guys transferred from Birmingham Brother Rice, and this guy's a very good player, And then, of course, got Justin Hollins, who's going to be a very, very good linebacker. I think he's going to be a very, very interesting player to watch, especially heading into the season. The next team, and of course, West Bloomfield also, let's not forget, they haven't made the playoffs since 2008. So they're on a mission this year. The schedule's brutal for them. They got to play at Lake Orion, at Oxford, at Clarkston, at Stony Creek. That's not going to be an easy game for them. And they play Dearborn week 1 at Wayne State. That should be a win for them. But then he also got the crossover, also week 9, my bad. So it could be a very interesting year at West Bloomfield. They got to win at least 2 of those road games, I think, if they want to qualify for the playoffs for the first time since 2008. Next team, of course, had a really, really nice year last year, and that was the Cougars of Rochester Stony Creek. The Cougars, of course, Brad Zuby had a lot of senior lane talent a year ago. Of course, but now you lose a lot of that talent. You bring in a new offensive coordinator, which is kind of odd because this was a team that ran the triple option offense to its perfection last year. This was one of the premier teams. And, of course, let's not forget, the 2 years, let's not forget, last year, they not only making the playoffs the first time since 2007, they just destroyed Lake Orion last year, 36-7 at their place. That's rough. You know what I mean? That was just tough. I always remember, and it was a Saturday night game. I remember that one. There was fireworks that was going off. There was after every touchdown, I think it was set up intentionally, but that's just between but you never know with that one. But Stony Creek, they lost a lot of talent from a year ago. This is a team where they could they could really struggle this year. And also, but Stony Creek does return linebacker Joe Platts, who's going to have to do a lot of relying on, a lot of experience. So it could be a very interesting year. And also, week 1, it does not get any easy for Stony Creek because they got to play the team who eliminated from the playoffs that year, which was Rochester Adams. And they play them week 1. That's not going to be an easy game right there in that one. And then, of course, you got the next team here on my list is going to be the Troy Athens Redhawks. Troy Athens has been, oddly, the last 2 seasons, 4-14 since the playoff loss in 2011 to Romeo. This has been a team that has been on the trackward down. Troy Athens, though, however, did have a very solid junior varsity team a year ago, and also those guys are now up on varsity. And now you add for the Redhawks, you add them to play alongside Devin Terry, who's a running back, very good running back, and Brendan McHugh, who's a good wide receiver. They got to find a quarterback. I still think the quarterback's the question over there. And also another thing that's been addressed that has to give the staff over there at Troy Athens, especially Josh Hepner, is their defense. Their defense, which is not good last year at all. Their defense has been a huge issue. I think Troy Athens, they still might have problems defensively this year. It could be an interesting year over at Troy Athens. Next team, of course, moves up from the white to the red. It's the Bloomfield Hills Blackhawks. The Blackhawks, very unique team coming up. This is a very good team. Well, actually, take back. They were not a very good team last year. They allowed 33.6 points a game last year. That's not very good. Offensively, they only scored 18 points, which is not good. You got to score at least more than 21, I think, in my opinion, to win a high school football game. They do return a very good gunslinger in Cameron Dalton, who, of course, he had a nice year last year, but now instead of having to play teams like Oak Park, Harrison, Adams, Southfield, and now you're going to be playing teams like Clarkston, Lake Orion, Oxford, West Bloomfield, Stony Creek. That's not going to be an easy game right there. For easy gains for Bloomfield Hills. It could be a long season over there for the Blackhawks. And then, of course, the last team here, of course, is the Colts of Troy. Troy's got a very good offensive lineman coming back. Troy has not been good lately. They've been almost 500, 16-20 since 2009. But Troy, they're 1-4, however, since the fourth quarter of the Lake Orion game at Ford Field. And, they had a really bad loss to West Bloomfield last year, and that really started their downspin. I think Troy could struggle again this year. It could be a tough year for Gary Griffin and his company, but they're going to be young, they're going to be inexperienced. But Troy, if they got a very tough game week 1 with Sterling Heights Stevenson. That's a tough one. Stevenson, of course, has got a new coach this year, and also, but they're one of those teams, the MAC Red, that can really do some damage, And then, of course, you look at the top 10 games in the OAA Red this year. You got to look at, of course, you got the crossovers week 9. Like I said, you still don't know who's going to be playing what in those games. And then, of course, you got the number 9, of course, is West Bloomfield at Oxford. Of course, Oxford beat West Bloomfield last year. That cost the Lakers a trip to playoffs. Oxford barely got in last year, and that's going to be an interesting game right there. I think that it's a good test for West Bloomfield, and especially Oxford as well, because he got Glacier Wallington. He doesn't have the weapons that he used to have, but it's still going to be an interesting matchup for the Lakers and the Wildcats when they meet week 7. Number 8, of course, is Macomb, Dakota. And of course, it's the big 3 week 1 games. Macomb, Dakota at Clarkston, Lake Orion at Chippewa Valley, and Romeo at Oxford week 1. Well, let's go with Chippewa. Romeo and Oxford is a very interesting matchup because they got 2 quarterbacks going against each other. Very good quarterbacks. Paul Hurley of Romeo and Glacier Wallington of Oxford. That's going to be a good match right there. I think the key to that one is going to be the defense. Whoever defense holds, I think will win that game. Of course, Lake Orion, Chippewa Valley, week 1. That's an interesting one as well. Both teams, they got athletes. This is a toss-up game right here. I think whoever wins, whatever team shows up, I think wins that game. It's a tough match for Lake Orion, but it's also a tough match for Chippewa Valley because week 2 they play Macomb, Dakota that next week, and then of course got Macomb, Dakota at Clarkson. This may be one of the best games in the state because Macomb Dakota's got a lot of chemistry back, a lot of talent coming back. Mike Giolani's done a very good job over there at Macomb Dakota. Clarkston, of course, Division I state championship. You get to play a team that has made the regional final every season. Mostly every season. They didn't make it in 2008 when they lost to Sterling Heights Stevenson. But Macomb Dakota, they're always a juggernaut to deal with. And Clarkston's going to be, and that's going to give Clarkston a lot of problems. Number 7 and 6, of course, we're going to stay with the Lakers. Of course, West Bloomfield goes to Lake Orion week 5. That's an interesting matchup. It's a rematch. Tristan Jackson will be back for that one. Of course, he did not play in that Lake Orion game last year. Number 6 is West Bloomfield at Clarkston. Of course, that's going to tell where West Bloomfield is at, and that's going to really test West Bloomfield. If West Bloomfield can win that game at Clarkston, that will be crazy. Number 5 is the rematch between Lake Orion and Stony Creek, Week 6. Dragon fans, Dragons players and coaches remember 36-7 last year, Stony Creek. They might want to smell blood that week. You know what I mean? That's going to be a huge matchup right there for Lake Orion. You know what I mean? I think that's a key game, I think, for the Dragons. And that one, the Cougars. Number 4 is West Bloomfield at Stony Creek. This is a nasty rivalry, of course. A couple of years ago, remember that fight, that they got over there at Stony Creek. This is the first time that West Bloomfield has gone back to Rochester, Stony Creek since that fight. And that will be, and of course, remember last year, Stony Creek, of course, what cost them probably a home game was they lost to West Bloomfield 31-26 last season. And Stony Creek remembers that game very, very well. Number 3, of course, is Clarkston at Oxford Week 5. That is going to be a fun one because, last year in the playoffs, it was 30-27 in favor of Clarkston in the playoffs. And the Wolves is going to be a very, very unique matchup for the Wildcats. But the Wildcats are going to give Clarkston problems. I think their time possession game is going to give them problems. I think that when you look at Clarkston, of course, defensively, this is not the same Clarkston team that they've had in years past. I think that this is going to be a really good one week 5. Number 2, of course, Lake Orion and Oxford. This is the Double O Trophy. Lake Orion has took home the last 2 Double O trophies, and this is a very unique matchup, of course. Remember last year it was 35-30 in favor of Lake Orion. Of course, that game was on ON TV. And, of course, this game with Orion and Oxford this year will also be on ON TV as well. So this will be a very interesting matchup. This is a nasty rivalry. Lake Orion has been 27-6-1 in that series, and that's going to be a very unique matchup to watch. And then the number 1 game, of course, D game. Clarkston, Lake Orion, Week 8. These two teams, do not like each other. Clarkston, however, has won 5 of 6 against the Dragons. That's something Lake Orion has got to turn around. Last year, Ian Erickson scored 6 touchdowns and a 49-28 win for the Wolves over the Dragons. If the Dragons have any chance, and I think they have a chance in this one, they got to stop Clarkston, and they got to stop the bleeding this season. Now, of course, when you look at my top 10 teams this year, of course, go with my number 10 team, of course. It's the Rochester Stony Creek Cougars. Number 9 is the Southfield Blue Jays. Number 8 is the Auburn Hills Avondale Yellow Jackets. Number 7, the West Bloomfield Lakers. 6 is the Oxford Wildcats. 5 is Lake Orion Dragons. 4 is the Harrison Hawks. 3 is the Rochester Adams Highlanders. Number 2, the Oak Park Knights, and the top team in the Dragons' Den top 10 to start the preseason is the Clarkston Wolves. So that'll be the poll this year. It's very interesting, very hard-fought research. Of course, everybody knows you got OA Media Day coming up next Saturday, August the 8th. I'll be at Rochester High School. That'll be very, very interesting to see right there, of course. OA Now will be there. Hope doing a podcast there, hoping to catch up with some coaches, talking about some things, but also this is not talk about football as well. We talk about volleyball, we talk about soccer, we talk about cross country track, other sports, the OA Now, this is a very, very good show. Very excited to do it. We like to thank today our staff here at ON TV or Neighborhood Television. We'd like to thank Joe Velez for being here. And we'd like to thank, of course, this has been a very, very good experience. This is hoping for years to come for the Dragons Den and also the ON TV blog and also ON TV itself. I am Sammy Taormina. I'm going to be signing out. Good night and God bless all.
OAA Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.